name is Marjaneh Rouhani, and I'm very honored to be here today at the International Television Iran Aryaee on Thursday, August 12th, 2021. And our Iranian calendar is 21st Amordad of 2580. And cannot say enough thank you to our producer Siavash and also Dr. Said Hamzavi, who does our Persian or Farsi speaking constitutional movement program on Tuesdays and Fridays in Farsi, and Thursdays is reserved thanks to the Television Iran Aryaee and the support of each and every one of you across the world in this crazy times, during all these crazy times where everybody is financially really stressed out and very much pressured psychologically and economically. Emotionally, we are all under enormous amount of stress after so many months of confusion, contradictory information, and trying to figure out why is everybody giving us mixed messages, and no government, in my opinion, is really functioning in the world globally. This is not just the United States, or we started a program for constitutional movement, and how we come up with a solution, and how Iranians have come up with a real workable solution to have a peaceful transition from the Islamic Republic, who has not been able to really take care of anything during the past 42 years and some months, just to add debt and a lot of tyranny and brutality and political prisoners, and just suppression of not just women and men or kids, but animals, pets, environment. I mean, I can go on, and how basically they impersonate Farsi speaking as an Iranian, but they are not Iranian, in my opinion, and some of them are born in other places. Not that other places to be born there's a problem, but I think it's in our blood, in a sense, that we have a sense of nationality and ownership to the place we are born, and it will always be the first motherland. And most of us who have been forced migrated to our second motherlands, and we love our second motherlands dearly, and noticed a lot of changes much earlier than other people who were born in their own country, because we had been through so much change, and we knew the early signals of the big T setting in, tyranny setting in. T stands for tyranny now, and you see the people risking their lives all across the globe, stepping off their homes, gathering, assembling, despite a global coup d'etat to take over everybody's property, everybody's national resources. And it seems like the corporations, the mega national corporations, have been at work for many, many years, way beyond on this virus. And as what that was initially announced, the pandemic by the corrupt World Health Organization, that's funded by corrupt NGOs, I want to say. And that NGO, particularly the Bill and Melinda, or Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, has been kicked out of 30 countries before. And so the World Health Organization announced a pandemic on March 11, 2020, and on March 13, 2020, former President Trump handed the key and lock of United States of America to the emergency state, which is FEMA. And during the emergency state, there are different cascade of events that can happen. And at that moment, most of us did not notice, or because of the green screen or things that were happening, like the president continued to do rallies, and then January 6th happened. He invited people to go to the Capitol. Then, for the first time, we ended up having political prisoners in the Capitol, and then the Capitol was surrounded by walls. I mean, that's traditionally been the home of Americans, and there's nothing sacred about it. It's more about the unity and how everybody's able to visit the Capitol, as a matter of fact, visit the White House, visit the national monuments that Americans have proudly been through a lot of ups and downs, and civil rights movement, and getting along with each other, and really becoming a nation, growing and becoming a nation through thick and thin, wars, and all the different things that we know about. And, now because of this whole the clock of the world has stopped since March 13. I don't want to say March 11th because for us in the United States, I want to say, at least from my perspective, because the United States is one of the largest, it is the largest democracy, and we are land of the free, land of rebellions, rebellious people, land of speaking up, land of Martin Luther King, land of Rosa Parks, land of Thomas Jefferson, land of George Washington, and many, many, many more. And recently, land of Rand Paul, who went on stage, put up a clip, and maybe he said it a little bit too late, or he should have said it maybe last year, and did not, as a doctor, as a senator. Looking back, always, I think his vision is 2020. Maybe we all should have moved much faster, but the illusions and the illusory experiences have been so enormous. The green screen in the background has been so enormous that we did not notice that there's this global coup d'etat that has been prepared for many years, and all of a sudden all the curtains dropped, and they're all out there. All these people who have been trying to hide, we have never seen, we have never known they have not even been elected officials. And for us in the United States, when you don't have an elected official making decisions, it's like a huge push and a huge knock on the shoulder, or like a waking up move for all of us that there's something off. So all of us knew something was off, but at the same time, the irregularities or all those counting that really occupied the nation for months, to count and discount and go to court, not understanding really, looking back, that there's no system in place. There's no court. There's no common sense. There's no, because we are actually all operating globally under emergency system. And until the people in the world realize that, then they don't expect too much of their elected officials. The elected officials have been, it looks like they have been taken hostage, because I think as a psychiatrist, I have to tell you, hostages send mixed messages when they cannot speak, when they are under enormous amount of stress, or they want to say something but they cannot, so they kind of start sending messages in different ways, or figuring out ways of communicating without saying, well, hey, I'm in a crisis, I cannot help you, I cannot do my job. And that's what we have seen. Everybody comes out from the, I want to say, typical, just the typical common sense information has been made, is made through media a controversy. It's something that, for example, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And we can see it in another version also, that there are people who have already joined the globalism movement and the takeover of the world for money, for taking over the resources of the world, and not considering the sovereignty of nations or sovereignty of our body, and basically using technology, or very high technology, that they have been talking about, all these scientists, since the 19th century onwards. If you read about their articles, many articles have been written about high tech and all these sci-fi movies that we all have seen, and kind of predictive, they all turn into the first ever opinion books and opinion articles, but then they turned into predictive programming. Then there was a big big paradigm shift in national relationships when Shah of Iran was sabotaged by this globalist movement, and everybody was in shock that the best friend of the United States of America and the world in peacemaking, as a matter of fact, because he was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize, Shahanshah Aryaee, and all of a sudden there was a huge paradigm shift. He was sabotaged, and then we can go into details of what Iranians experienced and how we were brought in here. And that's, I think, the piece that the resistance from all over the world is missing, because if they really understand, I've listened to different resistance layers from different countries. Most of them are trying to connect the dots. A lot of information is out there. A lot of misinformation is out there, because people want to always, in this, in the midst of crisis, make money, make a name for themselves. So it's not like something selfless. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of resistance from all across the world have gathered up a lot of energy, positive energy, is clearly indicating that they don't, even if they've accepted the injections, they do not want the passport, or what is called the global passport, because certainly the global passport is not going to necessarily lead to global travel. It just means that you will be identified at live or at real time, at a given time, immediately, instantly, wherever you are, at home, at work, and you can be stopped. And it's a very dark, dystopic future for humanity, because the people who are engaged in this format, they have married two huge paradigm shift together. And that's why it's so complicated for the resistance from all across the globe to really network together, which people are doing anyways in person, especially since Apple announced that they are monitoring everything that you send on your email, on your on the pictures, even if you're not on social media. So people are making their meetings in person, and a lot of things are not in place, and for all of this plan to come together, the parts had to be in place and moving coherently and consistently and persistently on a timely fashion. And I have to say, the move on their part, on the globalist part, is not happening in a good way, and it's not smooth, and it has lost all of its the wheels have fallen apart. I mean, the whole wagon has fallen apart. That's the good news. The bad news is that they keep, with the, like, sitting at the poker table, they kind of have gone all in. It's now or never situation for them. And that makes also humanity at the point where it's all or nothing for people all across the world in all 5 or 6 continents. And I have to tell you, when they married the engaging the human genome to kind of, we are frail, and that they view as Dr. Fauci, for example, have been interviewed on several occasions, and on 2 occasions at least, he has mentioned, if you disagree with me, you're going against science. And that's just exactly what a very cult-like takeover, or like, I don't have to give you any studies, I don't have to prove anything. I am a scientist by training, and you have to believe me, whatever I say, like a high priest. And he's short of really wearing a high priest clothing and come to people and say, it is what I say. And the same with the head of CDC, who comes out and really, to the shock of the nation, starts talking about overreaching and talks about the property ownership. And I think, most of, if you're watching this television, most of you are probably very familiar with the Event 201 or Event 221, because the O is actually like a picture of the Earth, where it was completely predictive of what is happening, and it was a drill for the globalist movement to take over our resources. So it kind of has put all of the people who work for governmental forces, the military, and the healthcare system and the media, and the high tech in each country, and the banking system in one scale, and the number of people who is most of us in the other scale. And the force of people, where we have most of us in most of our countries or homelands have established constitution, where we have laws, system, rule, and all these things that we can go to court, and most of the free world, aside from communism, communist countries. We are all equal in front of the law. And so we have our constitution to lean on and kind of full force go ahead and be able to avoid anarchy or avoid any violence or all of that. However, we have to realize that, if the other side is having a cult-like takeover of the world, you cannot keep, just because they're a scientist cult or scientist religion, because that's you never, I have not, I would appreciate if somebody who's watching or, send us a clip of any one of the people who have given instructions to the world about this virus that's ravaging the world, supposedly. And I'm not saying it's not out there. It is out there. It's a very serious condition, as a matter of fact, but it's treatable condition. And when something is treatable, especially with early treatment, we have studies, we can cite them. But, I started saying, basically, I would appreciate if anybody would send a clip saying, for example, Dr. Fauci or any other, even the Surgeon General or any other individual on the part of the government or the World Health Organization cited a study or cited a safety report or cited ethical report or cited anything. It's just that we are being told that this is it and there is no reason behind it. And that's how this scientific world has gone confused, in my opinion, basically, because then we have a lot of doctors who are coming out and basically it's we are used to evidence-based practice, and everything is like we have to do studies, it has to be double-blind. And right now, for example, this is a still experimental study, and I don't think we've been even told that there is a placebo study parallel to the injections that people are getting. So it just kind of really giving us a different, setup altogether, which we are not familiar with. And so if you're going about this to reason them out, basically you get the platform because you cannot talk. You cannot practice evidence-based medicine, evidence-based science, and it's just a yelling match and becomes a yelling match, and that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound right. There's this a study from Israel, there's this a study from Finland, and it's just basically there are 5 simple facts that basically top tier doctors have come up with. And Dr. McCullough has been quite outspoken about this, and he's a superstar in his field, and he used his authority, as a matter of fact, initially, and he was the first one who published the protocol for treatment that was completely ignored and was actually followed up by a fake study that was published in Lancet, and then the last page of Lancet a few weeks later, they apologized, or they retracted that article because there was no study. Actually, somebody wrote it and they retracted it, but then by then it was as if there is no treatment. And Dr. McCullough has, and many doctors from across the world, as a matter of fact, South America, India. And that's why the curve in India was so flat from the get-go, because they used multi-drug treatment, and they used nutraceuticals such as zinc, vitamin D, quercetin, vitamin C. They used ivermectin, they used hydroxychloroquine, they used azithromycin, and so on and so forth. And there were some simple facts that these top-tier doctors, some of them Nobel Prize winners, some of them super scientists, some of these drugs that I mentioned, as a matter of fact, have won the Nobel Prize because they have been around for such a long time, and they have been so effective for multiple reasons, off-label. And we, as physicians, are used to practice off-label because you can use your common sense like anything. If the mechanism of action, you go in and you apply that mechanism of action for something else. If it's inflammatory, you use Tylenol, for example, if the problem is blood coagulation. Depending on the situation, you have different anticoagulation that is available to the person or to the physician. But from the get-go, when we have to realize that there are very simple issues about this asymptomatic transmission, and which from the get-go made this a very political virus, and led up to people being segregated, led up to people being in an apartheid where you're not essential, so you have to stay home, or you're essential, you can come out and you can do your work because you're essential. And that's such a condescending and establishing an apartheid system in the society. I mean, never in medicine we have done this, and never in medicine we have quarantined the healthy. The quarantine is for people who feel sick or who are sick, and when somebody is sneezing or coughing or rhinorrhea or the water coming out of your eyes or nose, even if you show up to work, your the boss sends you home and says, stay home until you get better. And but most of us have the common sense not even go to work, or we call in sick. So this asymptomatic transmission from the get-go was a red flag, and made this a very political virus, in the sense that you were basically isolated. And that isolation of a person who doesn't have any symptom is a huge violation of body sovereignty and basically body movement. And it was as if using medical language for curfew or a coup d'etat, that there's this huge coup d'etat happening all across the world, and you better stay home. And it's not really about the virus or any disease or any sickness. The second issue being that this whole issue of even right now, this when the whole thing started, if you would step off or if you would have to go somewhere, you would be forced to be tested. And this excessive testing drove this madness and this mania of the virus, that basically, the more you test, you probably gonna find out something, even if you do enough MRI, which I have an interesting story about the echocardiogram that if you have time, I will share that with you. But the whole issue of testing, the more you test, you probably gonna find, and worse than that PCR, there are clips from the Nobel Prize winner of inventor of the polymerase reaction test, where it's just designed for studying the particle you want to blow up to study it, and you want to see it to study. Instead, it's not for diagnosis. And basically, his issue was more from the HIV era, and he even named a lot of people who were, who he was calling on Dr. Fauci and different authorities to have an argument with him, a scientific argument about using PCR and all the testing that was going on to diagnose. And he had different beliefs about, he was very upset that his testing was being abused, and conveniently or somehow Dr. Mullis died of quote unquote pneumonia, healthy person, 2 months before this whole thing broke out. And so even right now, as of June 25, 2021, both FDA and CDC and the World Health Organization, they have said, stop the testing. The testing is useless. So to have these mixed messages, I mean, if we have to choose an authority, where we're going to follow their instructions. So if Dr. Fauci is agreeing, or the powers to be are agreeing with the World Health Organization or FDA, they're saying basically as of 6/25/2021, the testing is not necessary. The more you test, you're gonna find, and especially with this Delta variant, that there is no testing for it. And so that's another issue, and there's no reason for testing an asymptomatic person again, basically, because a symptomatic person, it's just a very unusual, we've never done it in medicine before. This is not something like a screening test, like a pap smear or mammogram or colonoscopy that we have markers like by age 50. At age 50, you do your colonoscopy, or at age 40, you do your first mammogram, and then, you do it yearly, monitoring, stuff like that. And each country has their own guidelines, so I don't want to overstep my boundaries about that. And this whole concept of natural immunity that was also completely ignored, which is robust, definite. And if you contracted the virus and you develop the antibodies to get better, then you are immune. You don't need to get an injection, because then there are studies that have found that you would really increase the chances of bad, terrible side effects. And there are a couple of doctors that I can think of who died within a month at least, and they were, nobody is an anti. They kind of, this labeling of a person an anti-vaxxer when they're questioning is like name calling, in my opinion, instead of having a healthy argument. So basically, it all pointed into this global coup d'etat that we're seeing. And basically, it was very interesting that, we've seen every revolution take over. They go into, they take over the media. And that's what we see. The media has been taken over. We hear echo, parrot, same thing, same, Groundhog's Day every day. And to the point that even besides the name calling, the people who are questioning that, okay, the insert is blank. I have questions about this. Maybe I have an anaphylactic reaction to something in the in this bottle that is being given to me. Or a lot of times people have reported that it's already set up, it's already in the syringe, it's not even pulled off from a vial. So it's kind of an interesting phenomena that if you even, you go there, you are asking questions, and the person gets name calling. And I think, that really shows that there's something else happening. As a psychiatrist, this is a language war. This is a huge takeover. And I think, the powers or whoever was the little people who were behind the curtain, who are behind the curtain, and have been discovered by the world at this point, they're running out of money, and they're banking on owning humanity, or making humans, banking on the human genome. Like, they've made, and there are scientists who've made made sheep colon, or colonizing different, animals as well as plants. And we know already Monsanto inserted their own signature, or did the genetic modification of the seeds. And there was a big court case in India about these farmers who had planted had planted the Monsanto genetically signed seed, and then when it ended up in the neighboring farmland, that farmer went to court, and Monsanto said no. Basically, the court ruled for Monsanto, said basically because these plants have grown with our signature, it belongs to us. And I think this is a very important part of it, that this scientist cult who don't want to explain anything, or don't want to get engaged in any scientific argument, they have a lot of money. They are, especially since this pandemic took over people's, they made everyone globally confused about what was happening, because everybody was trusting their own governments to take care of them, not to sell them to the pharmaceutical companies. And then you go back in history and you see the 1992 Rio meeting, where the United Nations met, and the two scientists who came out of there and said, "Oh my gosh, this sounds too bad. I mean, it sounds very good on paper, but then in reality, that means there will be no private property, and that will damage. They will damage the earth." And they actually published a book, and the book, I think it's Brokering Earth. And they published it in the Rio meeting was in 92. They published their book in 94. So before that, before all of this, they have been, the United Nations has been working towards taking over the planet, including the humans, which they consider us cattle, I think. And whoever gets their signature signed in our genome owns the thoughts, dreams, past and future. And it can go in either direction, but it looks like, the way they're engaging with humanity, the way they're engaging with people when they come in and they give mixed messages, then they're not interested in having a discussion with the population or the owners of this planet. We all are familiar with that clip from the World Economic Forum, who also signed an agreement in conjunction with the United Nations a few years back. And they're working together to implement this whole process that's going to lead to nightmare. In a sense, all of this is not original idea. This has been happening or has been a theory, like, some people call it Marxism, communism, and some people call it technocracy. Some people call it transhumanism. I mean, it's a combination of all of this, and that's why it has caused so much confusion. And part of it is to make us all confused. So that we kind of stay like a deer in a headlight and we cannot connect the dots. Well, a lot of people have connected the dots, have come out and, like, for example, the Brits went with their kids, showed up at the BBC headquarters in London, and they had to call the police and the military or whatever forces they have, all garbed like they are, in Britain, in England, people don't even carry a gun. And these people show up all dressed up to go to war against ordinary people who are saying, where is our media? And you people have taken over our media. But they were really correct in the sense that if you are upset with something or you are feeling frustrated, you basically have to have your media. Like basically the reason Iranians, despite the fact that we have our constitution and our constitution 1906 with the progressive reforms of 1963 have been in place, and undercurrent of all this theocratic regime that's been so brutal treating the Iranian citizens. Now we get it, that why people, you send letters and you anticipate somebody from the outside help all these 80 million people who are trapped inside the grabs of this brutal regime. Now we are starting to understand why nobody has been helping, because it's been by design, not even by design, to replace our system and overlook our constitution and our law and order, but also to make it a petri dish test of how to take a nation hostage. And I think, if you wanted to see that, the American hostage crisis that happened in Iran, unfortunately, and our hearts were all broken and all the Iranians were really upset about that. And then you were seeing that the person who climbed over the American embassy's wall, she's in charge of some ministry, and her son is going and studying in the United States, and all of the relationships that they have. Things were not we were asking questions from different administrations, and we would never get a response, basically, that they're, yes, not even a yes, yeah, we know these people did this, but we are working with them. But all we have known is that Iran has been used as a petri dish for this infestation of terrorism, to practice it and bring it outside. And now it's in our laps in the United States of America, where the home of Americans, which is the Congress, now is surrounded by, I think they passed the budget for at least $1 billion to make a real tense or big wall around the Congress. And throughout all of this, where all this confusion is happening, 500 places are getting burned in Greece, and they're talking, the UN leader comes up and says there's the code red for climate and all that. And they're talking about global warming, where 20 years ago they were talking about, 30 years ago they were talking about the ice age. And actually, we are still in the ice age. If you talk to the real scientists who are not funded by these NGOs that have really taken over the narration of this scientific cult. And I call it a cult because you cannot argue with them. You cannot come up and say, oh, we did this study and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is the issue and you're wrong. You cannot have an argument. You have the high priest and you have all the minions and you have these other NGOs that are running the show, and they're getting bigger and richer by the minute, to the point that actually when Mr. Bezos went to the space, he sent his thank yous for becoming a super billionaire, or I think he has made to a trillionaire. And you have to also see the allocation of the money has been 50% of the money that was allocated, at least in the United States, went to these mega companies, where moms and pops pizza places or restaurants were closed. Walmart was open. All these huge stores were open. Amazon was open, and as a matter of fact, they were not observing social distancing, and they were not doing following the instructions that they were given to make more money. As a matter of fact, and nobody fined them. Nobody gave them a ticket or any reprimand, because they're part of this cult, and how to basically take our properties back, take our the ownership of a planet back. And it's basically like a usual story of religious war, basically, at this point. So they are using name of science as a religion or as a cult or as something. I don't think it's a religion even. I mean, it's a cult. And there are so many reasons to think of it as a cult. The number one being, again, that you cannot argue against it. And there are people who have been so brainwashed by the media, and that has happened in every revolution again. And also the similarities of what they picked up from the Bolshevik revolution, in the sense that the white Russians, who had a lot of money, who had a lot of people supporting them, the heart and soul of people, they were fighting for their motherland. There was this media that basically implemented the thought in the head of the Russians that despite that Bolsheviks to be very low percentage and not having any land, or Marx was outside the country, Lenin was outside, Trotsky was outside. All of these people were outside Russia at the time. But there was this key word that was used: trust the plan. And that's exactly what happened in the United States. In translation, they used to say trust. But there's this other cult in the United States that when all the irregularities happened and all the questions came up around election time, because they wanted to buy time and they wanted to really, you need time to have all of these pieces in place. So the phrase trust the plan, for example, military is, this is a quote from them, for example, military is moving under the instruction of President Trump. to kind of give hope to all these masses that there's a president who's not a president anymore. There's no legal route, even if you count the votes at this moment. And even if you get the say that he got Arizona or he got Michigan or he got, it doesn't matter. There's no legal route, constitutional route for him to get reinstated. And so it boils down to every citizen's responsibility to really implement what they wish locally by their local agents, by their local governance, by their local administration and legislators to really finally, get out of this situation if they want to. It's not up to, this just waiting game that they have. It was done the same way with the Russians while the Bolsheviks were kind of paving the way. And they really, that led up to more than 100 million people dying, being killed brutally. If not directly, but in work camps. And now we are seeing the same thing. FEMA is making camps. They're denying that we are making camps, but, there are like people who are sending clips and there are different platforms that are distributing them. And then these fact checkers who work for China constantly saying, no, none of this is true. But, when it walks like a dog and talks like quacks like a dog, it's a duck. So the fact checkers, nobody even trusts anymore. Nobody goes on YouTube anymore. Anybody, a lot of people have lost their accounts or they don't post anymore because they have realized that if you don't pay for a product, that means you are the product. And this all has been by design of a few people who are who feel they're God, and they want immortality, and they want this transhumanism that is mixed with this whole depopulation of humanity, as a matter of fact, because we after all these so many months, we still don't have any safety reports. Doctors after physicians, they go and they testify, they promote the treatment, they list the protocols that has worked, and if you have treatment for a condition, then you don't need an emergency state anymore. And then your rules and your constitution gets empowered, and you will have the court system again. So the reason anybody who talks about treatment gets immediately deplatformed is because the people who have taken over, the few percentage, it's not even a percent, who have taken over by this coup d'etat, the global coup d'etat, they don't want to lose their hold over the world. But many, many thanks to Dr. Senator Rand Paul, who was able to come out and say, we are at a moment of truth and at a crossroads. Will we allow these people to use fear and propaganda to do further harm to our society, economy, and children? Or will we stand together and say, absolutely not, not this time. I choose freedom. And I think this is a very monumental statement, despite the fact that maybe we can say he could have said it earlier. But it's a real nudge and real waker-upper for all of us, that to empower all of us to, if you want to really have our freedom, we have to pay the price. Freedom is not free. And we have to think about how we're going to meet in person, make eye-to-eye contact. And this goes for people all across the world. The evil, that is really interesting, because the words have been upside down. Live, Live, is the opposite, or spelled the other way, is evil. So they kind of, it's very symbolic of how they have crisscrossed and use the words in opposite direction. Like if you, to them, people who are asymptomatic, they're murdering the society, for example, and you can just reverse the words and you can get to the conclusion of the vocabulary that is the truth, as a matter of fact. But it's time for all of us to resist. And as Dr. Senator Rand Paul said, they cannot arrest all of us. And we cannot keep our kids at home. It's time for all of us to resume to our normal lives. When there is treatment, there is no reason for emergency status or emergency state. And we all have good laws, good constitutions, and a good heart and good vision for the future. And humanity wins with love. I thank you for your attention, and I will see you with Dr. Saeed Hamzavi tomorrow, Friday at 12 noon. And be alive and enjoy your life.